Hello, everyone. Welcome to a new episode of Tech Can Save Us podcast brought to you by Literal Humans. As always, I'm your host, Paul David, founder and CEO of Literal Humans. And we've got a great show today. I'm joined by Kirsten Karchmer, who's the CEO of Conceivable. We're going to talk about redefining fertility through precision medicine. Welcome to the show, Kirsten.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited. We're going to have a great conversation, I think.
Thank you. You've racked up the podcast episodes, so we're on a long list, but we want to rise to the top of that list in terms of quality. So we'll try here.
I agree.
So just by way of introduction, Kirsten is the CEO at a pioneering digital health company that is revolutionizing precision medicine. And we're going to talk about what precision medicine is in a second, specifically for fertility and women's wellness. Kirsten spent more than 2 decades transforming how women approach their reproductive health. After running one of North America's largest fertility wellness clinics, she saw an opportunity to bring her clinical expertise to scale. Conceivable combines data science, personalized nutraceuticals. Did I say that right? Nutraceuticals, yeah.
Supplements.
We're going to get into that. And lifestyle interventions to help women enhance their fertility outcomes through a holistic yet evidence-based approach. The company has been recognized as one of MedTech's most innovative health startups, and Kirsten herself has been named one of the top women in technology to watch. Well done, Kirsten. Welcome to the pod.
Thanks. So that was a great introduction. Thank you for such a sweet introduction. Yeah,
Did we miss anything? What else could we add?
Best-selling author.
Oh, okay. Gosh, we missed some big ones. Just quickly tell us about the book. What's the book?
The book is called Seeing Red. And that's my first book. I have another one coming out in a few weeks, but my first book was called Seeing Red, which is my publisher wanted it to be a how to fix your period book, but I actually wanted to write a manifesto, Seeing Red, which is, funny. It's like blood stains on the outside, not in a gross way, more artistic. But, it's really looking at, before I wrote that book, I read a study that said that 82% of women and people with periods had life-interrupting menstrual pain and PMS. And I was like, that's not even epidemic, that's a pandemic, right?
Wow.
Of menstrual disorder.
So yeah, you're talking about like reframing the statistics and understanding like the actual level of concern.
The question was, how in the world did we get here? I was the first board certified reproductive acupuncturist in North America. I was just like, how in the world did I not know that nearly every single woman has terrible periods? And so the book is a reflection of, how did we get here? How did we get to this state where periods became the worst thing that could happen to you? Gloria Steinem said if men had periods, having a period would be the coolest thing that ever happened to anybody, right? It'd be like a reason to make us feel bad because we don't have periods. Yet at the same time, we've just adopted that it's like it's a curse. We're filthy and worthless because of it. And I wanted to untangle that and did that on my book.
Cool. Well, let's jump in. And I think the first thing is just like a broad question in terms of, why fertility care needs a radical rethink. You started to get into it with your book. We know that the global fertility market is booming, but, in many ways, outcomes haven't improved. We'd love to dig into that to understand which outcomes have improved, which haven't, even though costs have risen. So yeah, what's broken about the current fertility ecosystem and also what's working?
Honestly, I think so much. The first thing is that the reason that I built this company was because I read a study that only 3% of couples could afford fertility treatments. And that in many countries, one IVF cycle is the equivalent cost of a year's salary. And honestly, I had been really proud that I worked with over 10,000 women, infertile women in my clinical career. I was really proud of that. And then when I saw that number, I was like, that means 97% of the people who wanted to have families didn't have access to anything. And so I thought, is it possible to build a piece of technology that could do that? But we'll talk about that later. But the other things that are broken is that I think we have to be really careful. Like IUI, inseminations, and in vitro fertilization can be helpful for some people. And let's be clear, some certain subset will need those interventions no matter what they do with us, right? What's capable through the app is not going to get them there. But a lot, probably 75 or 80% can fix their own problems. But what happens is right now we're pushing people who are not getting pregnant. Oh, let's just jump into IUI. And that's insemination. But they're not ready to stay pregnant. All the IUI does is inject the sperm in and if you use medication, get an extra egg. So you double your chances of fertilization. But there are some foundational things that need to work to stay pregnant. In my opinion, if you don't have those things working, IUI and IVF, they're not equipped to fix or repair those problems. And it's so much less likely that you're going to get pregnant. So if we're going to expose ourselves to the medications, to it's stressful, it's time consuming, We want to at least give women like the information so they're like, am I ready? Am I not ready? And what do I need to do to get ready so that once I make that investment, even an IUI can cost $2,500. And many, many women have done 10 or 12, even though the guidelines suggest only doing 3 or 4. So, and so I think that also using IUI and IVF is as a fast track to fertility. It's a little bit dangerous from an evolutionary standpoint, because if you have very severe insulin resistance that's unresolved, your child is a very high likelihood of also then having insulin resistance or having complications in birth or having all kinds of problems. And so when we're just like, that's okay, we'll just roll over obesity and exhaustion and adrenal failure and anovulation and things that are huge signals that her body needs attention for her long-term health. All of those things are associated with the diseases that are most likely to kill us. So overriding them is a bad idea, and using the desire to have a baby to motivate somebody is a good idea, in my opinion.
That's why, like, I feel like, that's maybe an aspect of it that's not talked about as much, because of the function that it serves largely. And obviously there's this whole backdrop of a lot of traditional reproductive medicine kind of falling short of for couples and women generally. Where do you see data and personalization kind of starting to help us close some of those gaps, in terms of access and cost and success rates in fertility care?
Well, everything's getting worse generally because we're just ignoring all these indicators. And so to me, like, because I was a reproductive acupuncturist for so long, in Chinese medicine, it evolved. I mean, reproductive acupuncture evolved as far back as 3,000 years ago. So there were no labs, there were no ultrasounds, there were no MRIs, there was observational data. And the job of being a reproductive acupuncturist was actually one of the most important jobs during the Qing dynasty, because basically they were called imperial doctors. You had an emperor, and then the emperor had lots of wives. And then those wives were supposed to make a lot of sons. And so each wife got an imperial doctor who came in every single day, felt her pulse, looked at her tongue, figured out and, followed her period, looked at her menstrual blood, looked at her cervical discharge, like everything, in order to determine she's on cycle day 4 of her period. What exactly does she need to be doing to be optimally fertile? And by optimally fertile, to me, that means optimally healthy. And so that is the level of personalization that I dream about for all women and people with periods, not just women who are trying to get pregnant.
Yeah. And that makes sense. I mean, that's a good segue into your product. I mean, if you could help us understand, we've used this term of precision medicine, and you want to understand and help the audience understand how Conceivable's, approach to precision medicine actually works. Walk us through what happens when someone uses Conceivable, from data collection to those tailored recommendations, if you can, please.
First, I just want to dovetail off, just like give one example for the listeners, just so they can kind of connect the dots before that, because you're like, personalized medicine. So if a woman doesn't have cervical discharge, so what are the questions we ask? Right. Your doctors can say it's not that big of a deal. You can use an artificial one. But there is a reason why she doesn't have any cervical discharge. One could be she doesn't drink water, right? Some of them are actually very easy. She's dehydrated, but dehydration is highly correlated with infertility. What you see with women who have dehydration is they will have drying of the zona, the shell of the egg, and so will have either harder to penetrate or more fracturing of the eggs. Really has an impact on egg quality. So instead of, like, you might say the underlying issue is that she has no cervical discharge, but the real underlying issue is she's dehydrated. And we have to figure out why. And that is, she not drinking water because she forgets, which is a behavioral problem, versus she's not thirsty, which is a clinical problem. So that's a good, like, high level sort of example of how we're thinking about fertility. Instead of, I think in Western medicine, what happens is we just stop. Like, you take a blood draw and we find that you have anemia. You're like, okay, take iron. No, the next question in personalized medicine is, the doctor should be saying, but why is she anemic?
Right.
Is she over exercising? Is she a vegan and she doesn't know how to eat appropriately for her vegan diet? Does she have a gut issue in which she can't break down the food she's eating and convert it into blood? There's so many different and other, like, less obvious things. But if we don't address that, right, then what happens is she has to take iron for the rest of her life. Which probably, the more that I sort of explain this, I think this is probably coming from the pharmaceutical model, because it's good for people to get a diagnosis of hypertension and then take blood pressure medicine until they die. when hypertension is well controlled with behavioral health. Problem is behavioral health is hard. So to your question, how does this work? So the Conceivable app is the first operating system for women's health. So we're starting with infertility because infertile women are very compliant. And I want to be able to show if you do exactly what I tell you what to do, the unbelievable results that you can get. But we'll build that same technology across a woman's whole reproductive life cycle, starting at age 7 until she dies. Wherever has PCOS, endometriosis, postpartum, whatever's going on, those experiences will change all along the way. And she gets a virtual care team that also stays with her for life. And that care team ages with her. So we're not ready for little girls, but if a little girl started using the app at age 7 to get ready for her first period, I will show up as 7. And the care team shows up at 7. And when she's a teenager, we'll be teenagers. And when she's a 90-year-old lady, we'll be 90-year-old ladies. So that you get this feeling of like togetherness, like we're a family. We're collecting everything about your health. And all we're doing is trying to help you have access to the life of your dreams. Getting rid of all the physical things, all the emotional things, all that. So you go through an assessment online, and then you get introduced to your care team. Kirsten AI, that's me. She comes in and she says, we built a predictive analytics tool so that predicts the likelihood of natural conception. Most fertility things will say, this is your fertile score. That means when you're fertile. No. Are you going to get pregnant or not in the next 6 months? That's what we were able to validate. And then say that score is about 30, which that's about the average score. Then the care team has a meeting, an AI meeting, and they're like, okay, what do we need to fix in order to get her score above 80? Well, she's exhausted. That's highly correlated with infertility. And then Kai will be like, between them, I asked her, I figured out why she's tired. She's doing a lot of things. She's only getting 5 hours of sleep. She is doing CrossFit because she feels tired. People think that doing exercise is good for your energy, but if you're exhausted, you're going straight to the adrenal glands and draining the adrenals, flooding your system with adrenaline and cortisol, which if you're a woman especially, think belly fat. And so then the therapist goes in and says, okay, she's been really stressed lately. Her heart rate variability is low. I'm going to set up a time to talk to her every day for 10 minutes about what's going on. Then the chef and the nutritionist is like, okay, she's a vegan and she's doing CrossFit and she only has 1 day of bleeding. We need to make more blood. And I've seen that from the ring that her blood sugar's been unstable. I'm going to over-index her on protein, fiber, and fat until we can get blood sugar. Go back to Saren and say, I want you really talking about helping her figure out what are the sources of the stress that's going on for her so we can start to untangle that on a daily basis and so on. So this care team is every single day checking in with you. How are you doing? And we have a lot of different ways to track either user collected data. We have a wearable, and then you go and talk to your formulator. So that formulator, people always say like, what supplements are good for fertility? This is your nutraceutical. There are no supplements that are good for fertility because having infertility is not like having COVID where you just like have a virus and you take one thing and it fixes it. It's a multi-system syndrome that is a reflection of how you live, what you eat, how you sleep, how you stress, the environment that you live in, the climate that you live in, the chemicals that you're exposed to. That accounts for about 80% of your fertility, which is amazing news. That means for $15 a month, we can fix those things. We don't need to spend $2,000. And on the other side of that, instead of being sick and feeling bad and having side effects, on the journey to that fertility, you actually got better energy, you slept better, your stress is less, your cycle gets regulated, you don't have PMS and cramping anymore. So to me, that's kind of a no-brainer.
I mean, you're touching on so many things. I mean, a lot is coming up for me right here. I mean, first and foremost, being a man who's observed this, from the outside and seen, like, I have friends who, they live in California and they've been exposed to wildfire smoke, and their babies have been born premature, like, and probably not a direct causal result, right? But that piece about it
Probably,
being
no, I would say probably a direct
so.
cause.
Okay. Yeah. But even some of these like basic things, like there are no supplements that are good for, like fertility, like that as a piece of knowledge that society, so, okay, once we know that, how do we internalize that into the systems that we have and the processes? Because I'm sure there's loads of people out there just grabbing all these supplements, and yeah.
They are. They're like, I mean, every time I do a consultation with a woman, I was like, okay, tell me what supplements you're taking.
Right.
And they literally go and get a basket
Wow.
of the lowest quality garbage you've ever seen that I would literally not give my dog. Like
Right.
most things that come from Amazon, I would not give my dog. There's a few good products on there.
Right.
But the reality is that there are supplements. I mean, we have a supplement company as part of Conceivable. There are supplements that can accelerate the improvement of those underlying issues.
Okay. Gotcha.
right? So say she does only have 1 day of bleeding. If she only has 1 day of bleeding, she does not have enough blood to make a
Hmm.
lining.
Hmm.
Only giving iron will make more blood, and we will give her iron, and we will give her more iron in her meals, but we need to figure out why she doesn't have any blood and
Hmm.
also fix that concurrently. If she's 39 years old, she
Hmm.
definitely has aging of her eggs.
Right.
So we know that things that are like antioxidants, NAC, omega, those kind of things can be really beneficial, especially in preparation for IVF and things like that. And so if she is tired all the time, and the reason that we discover is because she's got a gut issue, then colostrum, digestive enzymes, probiotics, prebiotics, all that is going to be really beneficial. So what we do is, like, in the app, after looking at all of that, you have a formulator, and the formulator figures out exactly what you need, and then we make custom packs. So you just get daily custom packs of what you need for your, not for your fertility, but for the underlying issues impacting your fertility. And we used to have a full line of clinical grade supplements, but because our whole ethos is about how to make all of this affordable for people, like our vitamin E was $71, right? So
Right.
you add like 4 or 5 of those things, now you're up to $400 or $500 a month. And just literally, I got connected to a new manufacturer who'd allowed us to not only personalize them, not only package them into like environmentally free stuff, but also reduce the price into about 50 to almost 70% less than what you would pay on Amazon, and 100 times better quality.
Right. Right.
So like
So
80 or
interesting.
$90 a month for 8 different supplements personalized for you.
And just circle back to the care team. Were you saying that the care team like sort of ages with the client? So help me understand that piece of it. That's super interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, so just, in the first versions in the first version still working on fertility, but when the whole we call it the experience, it's an operating system. Wherever the person enters, we'll use AI to age me down and the care team, or age me up if a 90-year-old lady starts using it. Like maybe she's got
Got it.
osteopenia and she wants to, and she's really exhausted. There's so many things we can do for our older population to help
Absolutely.
them, things that they can just do on their phone every single day.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I love that like sort of, I think I find product to be so fascinating as a marketer and a growth strategist. Like I love that intersection where, product meets, growth and marketing and that when you see true care going into products like that of like, how do we make this, more amenable? How do we make it easier? How do we make it more fluid for people to engage with someone who's closer to their age and, speaking their language, so to speak, like that? That to me shows such integrity. And in a space like health tech, femtech, like you need that because it's such, that people are coming in with such stigma, such, burden from the way that things have been dressed up in the media and things like that. So I really appreciate that care and intentionality on the product side there.
Thank you. Well, it's really, I mean, this has been a labor of love for me. Like, I built this company already once in 2016 and failed.
Mm, mm,
I could
mm.
not, I raised a bunch of money and I blew through all of it. I try to be really transparent because I hate when people are like, oh my God, I just came with this great idea. And, I took 6 years to write the algorithm.
Yeah.
And really when I first was in practice, there was a book I read called Never Eat the Burned Toast Again.
Mm,
And I knew what that meant. And I
uh-huh.
talked to like a bunch of my friends. And then I was like, do you know what this means? Don't eat the burnt toast. And they're like, yeah, you give everybody else something better. And then I started, no offense, Paul, started asking a bunch of men, do you know what this means? Don't eat the burned toast again. And they're like, I've never eaten burned toast in my life.
Wow. Wow. Yeah. Because they haven't like had that sort of instinctual, oh, I need to take care of other. Yeah. Yeah. That's really
Yes. And
interesting.
so has really been my guide. Like, when we go to the doctor, it's very disappointing. Our doctors don't have time to care for us.
Right.
They only have time to like dissect and diagnose, but they don't really have time to care for us. People get really mad at the physicians, but I think it's important to have compassion for them. Like they're in
Yeah.
a system that doesn't
Structural.
support them practicing the way that they would like to help us. There just isn't, it's just a system, And
Yeah.
so we're going to just do something about that
Yeah,
system.
yeah. I mean, we're talking to some folks in the health tech space. There's lots of tools now that can give clinicians time back, and AI scribes and platforms that you can put a clinician's practice on that can give them more time for. And your product plugs right into that hole that we're creating, whole opportunity that we're creating. Where clinicians have more time, they can take on more caregiving actually, which is a great segue. Like women's health, like it's been historically underfunded, under researched. I want to understand how you see that potentially changing, where this new momentum's coming from, and broadly, like talk us through those challenges and opportunities in the women's health innovation space right now.
I think that we have to be super careful in innovation in women's health. I see a lot of companies being funded, and I'm just like, That's not needed. We definitely don't need any more trackers in anywhere. Like there's no data that shows that tracking actually improves outcomes across the board. In fact, I think that trackers are quite injurious, at least to women who are trying to get pregnant, because they get some data. Oh, your PGD is 14 and your LH is 19. And then they text me a picture of it and they're like, oh my God, what does this mean? And what do I do about it? So I think that we have to be really careful to, like, as investors, really look at like what is needed and what is actually going to really change the bar
And
for
and
the,
just
yeah, go ahead.
just to jump in, I mean, I'm going to reveal something, but I'm actually a donor dad myself, right? Like twice over, hopefully thrice, right? And so I've done the clinic thing, I've done the turkey baster thing. I'm just laying it all out here for you,
Yeah.
Kirsten. But you know, this stuff has real costs because you know a lot of the you know friends that I've helped were using these trackers, and sometimes they're way off. And, you know, we've spent money to fly around the world to make a donation or we've invested in a clinic and things like that. And I'm just blown away. I'm like, wow, this has real implication for people's lives, let alone they're trying to make a kid, but they're spending money, they're spending time. And like to have products like this that are just not hitting the mark it blows me away, you know, and I'm just the donor, you know what I mean? So yeah.
Yeah. Well, and as a marketer, like if you look at the Flow app, that was started by 4 Russian guys. And about the same time that I started the first version of Conceivable in 2016, recently achieved unicorn status, $1 billion valuation. It does nothing. It's not even good. It doesn't even look good. They have 480 million downloads. So we know that women are hungry for support. There just isn't anything that's good that's supporting them. Do you know what I mean? Like what we're building. And I think that, you know, we have to figure out a way. I think that we're not caring for women. It's not only well enough to just treat their diseases, they're the future of the species. And how we care for them is a determining factor of how they care for our offspring. Because how healthy you are, right? If you have a lot of hormonal dysregulation, it makes it harder to be a balanced parent. Trust me, I've been there, right? If you're exhausted, it's very hard to be a great parent because you're tired and you don't have, you know, you're like, I don't want to play today because mommy just wants to lay on the couch because I'm tired. We interviewed 16,000 women last year. And we asked them the first question, what's your energy like on a 1 to 10, no caffeine or exercise for 2 whole days? 8% said 8 or above, which is what I'm looking for, right? Not perfect, but pretty darn solid. 50% said 5 or below, and 30% said 3 or below. And so, you know, like, it's not like, and people say, well, what supplements did you take for fatigue? I'm like, fatigue is all behavior. It's how you're sleeping. It's what you're eating. Could be how you're digesting, how you're exercising, all of these factors. Like taking a supplement for that will never work because as soon as you stop taking it, you'll get tired again. And you won't have rebuilt the function of making energy.
Right. Right. I'm glad the dog agrees. I'm glad you brought the funders into the room and that ecosystem, right? Because that ecosystem determines your ability to scale, to grow, to reach more women and actually help them, not just, you know, give them a tracker that's fundamentally broken. So talk to us about, you know, be remiss if we didn't ask about growth strategy. Like what's been your biggest challenge scaling Conceivable as both like a, you know, as a health tech company, as a femtech company, but also that space of like, we actually deliver something that is useful versus all this other noise that's out there.
There's 2 parts to that. So the biggest, I don't think that scaling is such a challenge for us. Building the product is really hard. It's not a tracker, right? It is really like something that you talk to every single day. Like you imagine it is like your support team. And, but people were building a completely new category. And when you're building a new category and you're saying like, yeah, did you know that your exhaustion is one of the primary drivers of your infertility? They've never heard that before.
What do you think about this like idea that like sometimes in marketing they say there's no such thing as new categories. All you can do is just be a really great subcategory within you know, an existing category. So if you take that to be true, where would Conceivable fit if you had to be a subcategory, or are you sticking to the new category piece?
No. I think that's interesting mental gymnastics. So I don't see us as a subcategory. I see them as a subcategory.
Them, the trackers
The trackers,
interesting.
right?
Got it.
So
Yes.
I don't know if there's any like what we're a subcategory of is if you literally had a team that you could talk to every single day that like stayed with you, no substitutions over 50 years.
And within that team, they could use these other tools. You could use these tools, but like you're kind of like a supra category or something like that. Yeah.
I mean, that's my guess. I mean, people say, what's your competition? My competition wishes they were me because, and I don't mean that like as an
Shots
asshole thing
fired.
to say.
No, no,
It's
no.
because in the fertility space, you have people who are doing menu planning. Okay, we do that. You have therapy and mental support for fertility. We do that. Okay, supplements for fertility. We already make them for you. You don't even have to guess, like guaranteed, whatever. You go to an acupuncturist, you get an acupuncturist in the app, and that acupuncturist can tell your acupuncturist what to do. So every single thing I see like, oh, we can do this better for women. And then I've just been building it. So, but building a seamless, delightful, sticky experience of that, because we don't have anybody to copy off of. The version of the app right now is not very good because like I drove all of the experience, but I'm too close to that experience. And so a lot of the things were not intuitive for people. So we're just going back and, a couple months we'll have the new version out.
That's so exciting. And I go back to this quote that I heard. And so I go to Silicon Valley once a year and I just interview founders and get their perspectives on growth strategy. I usually try to do it in January at the top of the year. And the best quote I heard this year was, the best moat is people loving your product. And that to me as a marketer is so humbling, so necessarily like, you don't need me if your product is great and it's sticky and people are just like, they're just in it and they're referring their friends. Like everyone knows the best marketing is word of mouth. So my whole profession, gets swept away if there's a really good product, really good word of mouth. I'm okay with that because if those products are delivering for women and actually, supporting better health outcomes, then I'll find another job. I'll go work in climate tech or something. You know what I mean? But it's, I really appreciate that fidelity to product because that's the best marketing,
It really is. And I mean, I was going to say, the other thing as a marketer, the thing that I would like not be where I'm at right now without TikTok.
Okay.
So Gary Vaynerchuk is one of my investors, and he's a LP, so not a direct investor. But and my investor was like, "I want you to go spend a day with Gary. I know we have time." And so I was like, "Cool, that's awesome." And at the end of the day, Gary's like, "You need to be on TikTok all day long, like all day long." And at the time, I was 50, and I was like, "What am
You're
I?"
cool enough for TikTok. Come on, Kirsten.
I just didn't know. Like, and I'd never been on TikTok, so I didn't know that like 40% of the population's over 40.
Yeah.
And he's like, what am I going to dance about ovaries? I don't even know what to do. And he's like, fuck you. Quit being such a baby. Hold up your phone. He goes, you're really interesting. Hold up your phone and start teaching every day.
Nice.
And in like 3 months, I had 200,000 followers. So if you decide to use TikTok, be your absolute authentic self. Don't, if you're like, I'm sloppy. That's why I have 500,000 followers on TikTok. I have 30,000 on Instagram. No comparison. Instagram wants you to be pretty and perfect and whatever. No, me, I'm like in bed, drinking my tea. I'm like, okay, this is some bullshit I got to tell you about, right? It doesn't perform well on Instagram. But the takeaway is that I was having so much activity and so many DMs that I started doing a live show and every day and would have 3,000 or 4,000 people on the call a day asking questions, just straight Q&A. And if you're a founder listening to this and you're not doing this every day, people be like, I can't believe you spend an hour a day with them. I'm like, you know what? I know my customer.
Yeah.
I know my customer because like the reason we built a therapist is because every day in the live, they're like, how do you cope with the stress? Once I ovulate, between ovulation, they call it the 2-week wait, between ovulation and my period test, I'm freaking the hell out. Okay, I'm going to go build a therapist to handle that.
Yeah. And again, that's like the other side of the product piece. And I'm going to let you go now because I know you need to run. But if you over index on product, you lose sight of the customer. You know what I mean? And so you got to like maintain that balance and hold them, and hold their needs and their wants and their desires and the life that you want them to live and be better at as a result of your product as you're developing your product. So I really, really appreciate that. Kirsten, I know you need to go. This has been a fantastic conversation. We'd love to have you back for part 2 because there's so much more we could talk about. And it seems like you're on the move, so we want to like catch that rocket as well. Thank you so much, Kirsten, for joining us. And to our guests out there, I think Conceivable is a great example of what happens when you combine data, technology, empathy in health tech. And you're really showing that fertility care doesn't have to be reactive or clinical. It can be predictive, it can be personalized, and it can be deeply human. So thank you, Kirsten, for joining us. And it's been another great episode of Tech Can't Save Us podcast, brought to you by Literal Humans. We've had the founder and CEO of Conceivable, Kirsten Karchmer, who's doing great work redefining fertility care for women. Thanks, Kirsten.
Thank you so much.